So welcome to our second Integrating TOK webinar. We're looking today at Group 2 language acquisition subjects within the diploma program. What I'd like to get across today is to give you clarity on how TOK functions, as I've said there, as the hub of the diploma program, and offer you a few ideas on how you can integrate TOK with language acquisition. I'm really hoping that there are some non-TOK teachers out there. We're a bit of a strange breed, TOK teachers, so it's nice to get a bit of perspective from those not sort of obsessed with all the strange things that we do. So I'm really hoping that there are people out there who are language teachers, perhaps not that familiar with TOK, perhaps new teachers coming to the DP for the first time, coming to TOK for the first time, and wondering what this strange subject is. So I hope to give you a little bit of clarity on that. So just a quick outline of what we'll be looking at today. I'm just going to introduce myself first of all. If you've seen the first integration webinar, this will be very familiar. I'm basing the structure on that, so I hope it's not too repetitive. As I said, I hope that there are some non-TOK teachers out there, so I'm going to just give you a little introduction to what TOK is, the structure of the course, the aims, what we're trying to do in TOK. Then talk about this problem of integration, because it is a problem. It's something that's discussed in pretty much every IB conference with IB coordinators, DP coordinators, TOK coordinators. How do we do this? What does it really mean, integrating TOK with the rest of the DP? So I'll just outline what that problem is, what the discussion is that people have. Then I'm going to try and give you some specific ways to integrate Group 2 with TOK. I'm going to look at some of the concepts. There are 12 specific concepts that we look at in TOK. I mean, of course, there are hundreds of concepts that we come across in the course, but there are 12 prominent, particularly important TOK concepts that I'm going to focus on. I'm going to just mention a few key thinkers, just a handful of people who work really well in TOK and have a lot to say about language acquisition. I'm going to look at real life situations. So as I'm going to say, TOK is not just about these strange concepts and ideas that are not applicable to the real world. Quite the reverse. We try to apply our ideas in TOK as much as possible to the real world. And we do that by looking at what we call real life situations. So I'm going to go through some of the kind of things that work in TOK and kind of bridge the gap between what you're doing in language and what we do in TOK. Then I'd like to just talk a little bit about the way we frame discussions in TOK. What kind of debates and conversations do you have with your students in TOK? I mean, as I'll say, anything that gets them talking, anything that gets them offering their ideas is great, but we do try to do it in a particular way in TOK, so I'm going to just outline what that way is. Then I'd just like to self-promote, if that's okay, for a couple of slides. We offer a lot of support for integrating the DP with TOK and vice versa. So I'd just like to outline the resources that we have on the site. I'd like to also just mention that we love to come and visit schools, or I love to come and visit schools, particularly talking to people who are not experts in TOK, so people coming to TOK for the first time, non-TOK teachers, and also students who are just beginning the course. So I'm just going to outline that. Probably the worst time in history to be organising school visits, but there we go. And then finally, just a very short bit of information on how you can join the site and what membership benefits bring you. Okay, so the webinar will last around 45 minutes. I will take questions at the end, so if you want to just send in some messages on the chat, I'll look through it towards the end of the webinar and try and respond to the kind of questions that you've had. If you haven't got questions right now, but you want to send an email asking questions, then I'm very happy to field those kind of queries. I will be sending out a debrief email shortly after this event ends. That will have the link for the video of the webinar. It will also have responses to some of the most common questions that people are asking, and I'll also give you access to this presentation. So if you are a TOK coordinator, if you want your language teachers to have a few more ideas about how to use TOK, then maybe you can pass this presentation on to them. It's got links to the real life situations and the key thinkers and so forth that I will be discussing later on in the webinar. Okay, so first of all, just a quick outline of what this course is. What do we do in TOK? It's supposedly the flagship course of the DP. It's one of the most important things that we do. It's one of the reasons why the DP is unique. I am obviously completely biased and completely unobjective about TOK. I love it. I'm fanatical about it. I started as a history teacher. I've also taught film, I've taught geography, I've taught politics, I've taught a lot of different things within a lot of different programs, and I've never been involved in a course that has grabbed me so much as TOK. I absolutely love teaching it. And I think my passion comes across excuse me, in lessons with students. They love the lessons that I teach, and I very much embrace this idea that it's what makes the DP so special. In TOK, we ask students where we get knowledge from, how we use it, how it develops over time. This is what we call second order knowledge. So we are not looking directly at the world. We are looking at how we obtain knowledge about the world and how we use that knowledge. I'll come back to that when we look at how we frame our TOK discussions. But that's essentially what we are doing in TOK. We're asking that question. How do you know? How do you know what you know? So that's how it differs slightly from the DP subjects. We're looking at the sources of how we figure out what's going on in the world. We are not assessed, as you'll probably be aware, with an exam at the end of the course. Students write an essay, which is 2/3 of the final mark, and they also design an exhibition, which is 1/3 of the final mark. The exhibition is a kind of public event. It's one where they present, excuse me, I've got my cough back again. It's when they present 3 different objects, which they link to an IA prompt, and they link it to aspects of the course, which again, I'll come back to in a second. So, yeah, the other really important aspect of TOK is that it is designed to bring all the aspects of the DP together. Excuse me, getting students to think critically about all of their other DP courses. So this is why we refer to it as being the hub, one of the core aspects of the DP. And it's the element of the DP that really gets discussions going, and you can it's the sort of engine room of all these kind of discussions about what their other subjects are, the nature of their other subjects, and I'm always very keen to send my students off to discuss things that they've been doing with me in their other subjects. Excuse me. It's also, I think, the perfect opportunity to demonstrate how education, how the DP education aligns with these 4 C's that a lot of people have been talking about, well, for quite a while now, but which I think work quite well. That, what we should be doing with students in this strange Google age. We should be encouraging these 4 skills: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And I don't think that really happens anywhere as well as in the TOK course. I think it's absolutely perfect for pushing those 4 C skills, which again, I'll refer back to later on. Okay, so this is what the course looks like now. We've got a new syllabus that we've just started. Students have started learning this summer the new syllabus for exams in 2022. So we have these 5 areas of knowledge that they concentrate on. I think, the best way of describing the areas of knowledge is how we categorize ideas and concepts. So you can see for yourself what those 5 areas of knowledge are. We have 5 optional themes on at the bottom of the diagram. Again, you can see what those are for yourself. Now, these are not quite the same. These are not quite the same as the areas of knowledge. They are more, well, I've termed them kind of our affiliations, our personal and societal affiliations. So, you know, we look at the areas of knowledge, but we are sort of looking through the lens of the optional themes. They sort of affect the way we look at the world and judge those 5 areas of knowledge. And I think those 2 things combined sort of help to form us as knowers. So in the center of the diagram, we've got the core theme, which is called knowledge and the knower. And that's a sort of more personal take on how we view, understand, make sense of the world, and perhaps connected to processes such as memory and reason and emotion and so forth, which we used to consider separately in the TOK course, but have all become sort of amalgamated in that center of the diagram. So this is this is our way of visualizing what the course is and how it fits together. Obviously, if you are a language teacher rather than a TOK teacher, you'll notice immediately that language is one of the optional themes. So it is an exceptionally important part of the TOK course. Students in theory should just be learning 2 of the optional themes in detail. Personally, I think it's almost impossible to run a TOK course without looking at all of those, at least in passing at some point during the course. Language for me is absolutely essential. It's certainly one that I will be concentrating on with my students. But it may not be covered in detail in some schools, but I'm sure every school in the TOK course will be looking at language to some degree. So language acquisition, group 2 subjects is an exceptionally important part of the TOK course. All right, so what do we mean by integration? Why is it a problem? Why is it permanently or perpetually a topic of conversation in DP conferences? Well, first of all, you know, what do we mean by integration? Well, we mean using TOK to deepen students' understanding of their DP subjects, but also, you know, the other way around, using their subjects in order to understand TOK. I think there should be this mutual relationship between TOK and the rest of the DP. I don't think that always happens. I think TOK teachers are normally quite good about trying to push their ideas into other aspects of the DP, but I don't think it always comes from the other direction. So, excuse me, I personally have always tried to strong arm the rest of the DP teaching staff into coming into my TOK lessons, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes almost dragging them, kicking and screaming. Sometimes I've persuaded them to provide lessons for me. You know, I focus on mathematics, for example, because I'm pretty weak at maths, and I always grab the maths teacher and make them come in and teach a session on some aspect of mathematics. Some departments I've always found it easy to work with somehow. You know, they've always been willing to come in and discuss things. I've had fantastic lectures, sessions by drama teachers. I've had amazing sessions by science teachers. So I try and get that going as much as possible. It's not always easy, but I do love to see other teachers come into my lessons and watch what we're doing. And I try and sort of make this integration as visible as I possibly can. I think the way that TOK has traditionally been taught is not always conducive for integration. I personally used to teach it. I mean, you've just seen the diagram of the different aspects of the course. Sorry, let's go back. I used to go through kind of almost like a tick box approach or a shopping list approach. I spent a couple of weeks on the arts, a couple of weeks on history, a couple of weeks on human sciences, etc., etc. Which is okay, but the problem with that, excuse me, is that other teachers can't really access what you're doing. You know, me as a mathematics teacher, well, how can I get involved in your lessons on history? You know, I'm sort of closed out of that during those weeks when you are covering that part of the course. You can make links, but it's difficult. We're all massively busy, so it's hard to gain access if you approach TOK in that way and structure your course in that way. So I've been teaching in the schools that I've worked something called the big question approach to TOK, big question framework, which we developed a few years ago. Excuse me. And these questions form our unit titles in TOK. And any teacher, any subject teacher can answer or offer thoughts on these big questions. And it just means that at any point of the year, any teacher can be involved in TOK. So we will be doing a big question in TOK, and I can say to my students, right now, go off and ask your teachers what they think of this question. How would they answer this question in the context of their subject? So what does this look like? These are the original big questions, okay? The big questions that we look at in TOK. I won't read through them, but you can get the idea of what they are. There are 6 big questions, and they ask all sorts of questions on the nature of knowledge, how it changes over time, how the way our personal perspectives, our societal perspectives, shape the way we look at the world, how we use language. You can see big question 3, very, very relevant to language, how the way we use language to communicate ideas changes the meaning of things. So those are our questions that we look at, and you can see very quickly that any subject teacher, anyone, can have an opinion on these questions. So it means that everyone can be involved in TOK at any time. And I offer these questions to all of the DP staff where I'm teaching. And if they want to come in and offer their thoughts on them, then I grab them and they come in and give some ideas. However, we need to go a little bit further than this. Excuse me. So, what we do with these 6 big questions, we simply transfer them into the context of each of the DP subjects. So for language acquisition, we go from the original big questions to these questions, very, very simple. Let's take number 5, how is new knowledge about the world created? Creativity, this big question. We simply turn that into how is new knowledge about language acquisition created? How is our understanding of the world influenced by the way knowledge is communicated? How is our understanding of language acquisition influenced by the way knowledge is communicated? So you can see it's very simple. It just shifts the question into the context of language acquisition, language lessons. Which is fine, okay, but what does that mean in practice? Well, before we go on, perhaps just worth saying, why do we do it? So we've talked about what integration is. We've talked about the problem of integration. Why bother with it in the first place? I mean, as I've mentioned, I think that TOK can deepen our understanding of any subject, helping to encourage the ideas of the 4 C's: critical thinking, communicating ideas, creativity, by which we mean just coming up with new ways of figuring things out, different ways of thinking, and collaboration. By that, I don't mean just working with other students in the classroom. That's an important part of it, but collaboration, I think, is also accepting that there are often very different approaches to understanding the world, very different belief systems, very different frameworks for understanding, often radically different according to sort of cultural background. So I think that's why collaboration is so important. So I think it does that. I think it enriches our understanding of language acquisition. So I think it's a fantastic thing to be doing and to be able to do, integrating the different parts of the DP, drawing on TOK in language and obviously vice versa. So I think it really creates, excuse me, a complete education, a proper education. But how do you do it? And that's the question. Okay, that sounds great. How do you actually do it? So let me try and offer a few specific ways in which we can integrate these subjects with TOK. So as I mentioned, I mean, this is the IB, this is not me. The IB for the new Theory of Knowledge course have identified 12 particularly significant concepts, ideas. These are the kind of things that students need to be able to refer to within their essay, within the exhibition, but also just throughout the course. A range of words and ideas that have kind of different relationships with knowledge and how we understand the world. Now, when I first saw these in the new syllabus for TOK, I wondered what the point of them was. Not necessarily being dismissive, but just thinking, okay, so what role are these ideas going to play? And then the more I kind of dealt with them, the more I sort of planned lessons, the more I thought about integration, the more I thought that they are a fantastic scaffold for understanding TOK, and not just for us in the TOK department, not just for TOK students, but also for non-TOK members of the faculty. Okay, so these words give us kind of an instant access into TOK. They give us a great kind of outline of the sort of things that we look at in TOK. So again, every DP teacher can talk about these different ideas in reference to knowledge in their own classes. So, we can all talk about what truth means when it comes to language. Instantly in my head, I'm getting the idea that, different words which have the same denotation can have totally different connotations, and that shifts truth, when it comes to using that word to represent and symbolize something. Obviously, explanation there is inherently linked to language. How we explain something obviously depends on the clarity of the language that we use, and we can use language in different ways to give different explanations. Culture, we can look at how different cultures have use language in a different way. We can look at words that might exist in one culture but not in another culture. There are some fantastic examples. We do this in TOK a lot. There are some fantastic examples of words that really are at the heart of certain cultures and don't appear elsewhere. Does that mean that the concept that they represent does not exist in other cultures? That's a fantastic conversation to have with your students. Power, who's in charge of language? Who should be in charge of language? Something else that I'll come back to in a second. What's the relationship between who legislates when it comes to language, and also why they legislate? Why is language such an important tool in the armory of governments and other organizations? So, all of those words can help you explore, just some fantastic ideas and concepts in language, in the language courses. And in so doing, you will be integrating TOK. So, without giving any specific examples so far, we've got some great ideas for TOK related lessons. But let me perhaps offer you some even more specific sort of examples of how the 12 key concepts can be used. Here are 3 of them picked out. I like quotes a lot, so that's a great quote from the novelist Murakami. Sorry, I'm covering that with my head, aren't I? Let's move that slightly. If you want to talk about something new, you have to make up a new kind of language. Okay, so in other words, this is a big TOK concept. Can we know something without having words for it? Wittgenstein said, the extent of my language is the extent of my world. This is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and it's a great one to get into. We look at this a lot in TOK, and it's something that you could be looking at in language acquisition. This is what I've just mentioned. Culture. This is a fantastic article. There are loads of articles like this. This is a BBC article looking at culturally specific terms that exist in different societies. So when you have a look at this presentation, you can follow that link to the article. It's a really good article. And I've got some suggestions there about how you can explore that source and the kind of things that you can discuss with your students. So culture, a very close relationship with language, of course. Truth, nice quote there from Emerson: use what language you will, you can never say anything but what you are. I think that's a lovely quote to get some conversations going with your students. So yeah, as I will say later, our resources offer a lot more links to media sources, a lot more quotes for all of the 12 concepts to give you some suggestions on how you can get something started with your students discussing these fantastic ideas that are so important to the TOK course. All right, so moving on to think about some key thinkers. Who are the kind of people that we are interested in TOK, and the kind of people that you can draw on in language lessons. I run a fantastic lesson with my students. Fantastic because they just feel so wonderful about this, because they keep being told by people that texting is dumbing down language, you know, the social media is frying our brains, etc., etc. And there are even people who are suggesting that our brains are physically changing because of the way in which we're using social media and texting and new forms of communication. This is a lovely antidote to that. A fantastic linguist, John McWhorter, who is hilarious and brilliant and erudite and just a wonderful guy. This is a talk he gave on completely reversing that idea. And he talks about how texting is, well, in his words, miraculous. He thinks that this is a new form of communication. It's not language as we know it. It's a new form of communication, a new way of getting knowledge across. And he celebrates it and he thinks it's brilliant. So that's a lovely talk to show to your students and maybe, you know, show that you're not a sort of old fogey that just thinks these new things that we use all the time are just a terrible thing for society. So that's, I mean, if we're thinking about our big questions, I'm in TOK, I'm always going back to big questions. This links to the fifth big question, which is all about creating new knowledge. So in other words, using technology and language to get ideas across in a new kind of way, a miraculous new form, new way. Second person, Erin McKean, who is another linguist. She gives a great talk here about how I mean, this links back to power, how we are all experts on language. I think she defines language as an agreement between a group of people on how they will communicate, which is a lovely way of thinking about language, a lovely way of thinking about it, about the way we communicate. You know, taking us away from, you know, this really strict sort of rule book orientated form of communication in which we need to know perfect grammar. It's just the way we've agreed to talk to other people, just the way we've agreed to communicate with other people. So that shifts the meaning, you know, radically when it comes to language. And she encourages people to make up their own words, and she shows some ways in which that can be done, and the kind of methods that we use when we form new words and new aspects of language. Mark Pagel is an anthropologist, and he talks there, you know, this links to the key concept of culture. He talks here about how language is constantly changing over time, and the relationship between language and the social group that is using language. So that's another fantastic talk. He's a great thinker. And then finally, we've got ideas from James Geary, and he talks about metaphors, which we come back to a lot in TOK. You know, the way in which we use this very peculiar, in some ways, form of language in order to express ideas. So that's another talk that you can have a look at. Another really good key thinker that we draw on in TOK. So those are just four thinkers. There are, you know, obviously hundreds more thinkers that we can use when it comes to language acquisition, and this is the kind of way in which we can use them. Okay, so really important in the TOK course, in order to sort of prove the relevance of TOK. I mean, for example, in one of the assessment tasks, the exhibition, it's all about showing how TOK concepts manifest themselves in the real world. Okay, so, you know, this is not a philosophy course. This is not an abstract set of ideas. We do not like hypothetical examples in TOK. We like our ideas and concepts and theories and thinkers and so forth to be applicable to the real world. We want to be able to use the ideas that we look at in TOK. So in order to do that, we use real life situations to support what we're saying, to justify our ideas, and we also kind of extract our discussion points and our knowledge questions from real life situations, from what's going on in the world. So again, it's a kind of two-way thing. So what is going on in the world? What is going on in the world right now? We try and use TOK to make sense of it and help us sort of move on and compare these real life situations to other real life situations, making all these connections. So real life situations are, well, anything that's real, anything that's going on in the world today. So they can be news events, they can be big sort of issues at a local level, at a global level, at a personal level. They are the experiences of students inside the classroom or outside the school. So anything that's real, anything that's going on in the world, anything that prompts a question, anything that makes us think, anything that we want to find out more about. So these are what real life situations are. So let me give you some examples of the kind of real life situations that we're interested in TOK and that link to language acquisition. So here are four that are actually very recent. I've spotted all of these in the news. Well, the first one over the last couple of days, I think I saw this posted on social media. I read The Guardian voraciously. I try and keep it balanced with more sort of central and even right-wing sources, but Guardian is kind of one of my left-wing sources. I try and have a balanced view of all of what's going on in the world. But yeah, I do like The Guardian. The Guardian printed an article which had been written entirely by a robot, and the robot had chosen the title, "Are You Scared Yet, Human?" You know, this has all been written by AI, which was interesting. I mean, that's a great way of getting a discussion started with your students on language, you know, the extent to which language is a characteristic of a sentient being. You know, AI doesn't exist yet, but we do have these robots that write loads and loads of things online, often news articles, and it's even creepier still when you hear them actually read out by a machine. It sounds very, very strange still, but this one was a very good one. It was quite hard to spot that it hadn't been written by a human. There's a great counterclaim to it, though, an article also published in The Guardian a couple of days later, saying, do not be afraid, this was written by a human, and saying, you know, we're still very far away from AI, and even though a robot wrote that, they still had to be programmed in the first place. So, you know, they still rely completely on our input. So I don't know, it's a great discussion. It's a good one about language, relationship between language and technology, language and AI, and our feelings towards where things are going. Obviously, the shutdown, the COVID shutdown, the quarantine that a lot of us are still in, is prompting a lot of real life situations, a lot of questions, a lot of debate. This one links to Indigenous societies, where I personally and in TOK in general, we're very interested in the relationship between language and Indigenous societies. A lot of these languages are in danger. A lot of them have died out, and when they die out, you know, we lose a lot. And thinking about what we lose is a really good conversation to have with students. This one focuses, it actually touches on a lot of TOK. This one focuses on how Indigenous groups are having to use online methods to ensure the survival of Indigenous languages. So it prompts a lot of different things there. First of all, the importance of language in forming our identity, the way in which language, excuse me, encompasses our knowledge, and the use of technology and online methods to protect language. So that's a really nice article which I found a few days ago. The fourth one, hence this rather cool picture on this slide, and I love this. This is a really simple idea. So we have this word life, and it means something to us. Yet there is a possibility, a strong possibility, that our definition of life is much too restrictive in order to understand life out there in the universe. And so people have suggested we need another word for life, and they suggest spelling it with a Y, L-Y-F-E, life. So it's still life, but spelled in a different way. And actually gives you completely different perception of this word. And we may need to broaden our definition of what life is and what characterizes life in order to find life in another part of the galaxy or the universe. So you know, that's a really nice demonstration of how a word can give us a very set, specific definition, and how sometimes we need to go beyond that if we want to create new knowledge and gather new understanding. This final one there, a USA article, obviously a lot of protests going on in the world today. This one linking to the killing of George Floyd, and it looks at the way in which the media and certain politicians are very careful in the language that they use in order to give a certain idea of what's going on, and you can describe the same kind of event, the same protest, and protest itself is one of these words. You can describe the same protest in lots of different ways and give, you know, the same event becomes something very, very different according to the words that you choose for that event. So that's a really well, quite a controversial kind of issue to look at, but I think a really, really important one. And it highlights how we should be so careful with the words that we use. And maybe you can get your students to the point of thinking, you know, is it possible to use words in an objective way? Can we actually use them in a neutral way, or are they always loaded? So, you know, I think you could get some quite interesting little activities going in class about, you know, using words to describe the same thing, but in a very kind of loaded, manipulative sort of way. So that's a really, really important and interesting and engaging real life situation there. So those are the kind of things that work really well in TOK. I publish a newsletter every month. If you're not familiar with what I do, I publish a newsletter every month, and I try and put in as many stories as I can, as many real life situations as I can, linking to all parts of the DP course. So a lot of them often, I mean, that's such as these, link very nicely to language, and will allow you to bring what's going on in the world right now into your class, and at the same time get some TOK discussions going. Okay, so how do we do this discussion? How do we encourage the students to talk about ideas? We do it, excuse me, in a particular kind of way in TOK, or try to do it in a particular kind of way. First of all, as I said before, any kind of discussion I think is great. Any activity in which you're asking for students' opinions is brilliant. They like to be heard. They need to be heard. I think they also need to be challenged. I think they have a lot of assumptions, and you know, you can wind them up a lot, can't you? You're playing devil's advocate, being sort of Socratic about it and asking them questions back, and actually that can go too far sometimes. But I think it's great to challenge their assumptions. I think it's great to ask them, what, you know, why do you think that? Where did you get that from? And often, you know, you can present them with a completely different idea to what they thought was true, and it really gets them thinking, and that's essentially what we do in TOK. So we try and frame our discussions in TOK around what we call knowledge questions, which are exactly that: questions about knowledge, questions about what we know. And as I kind of very quickly mentioned beforehand, we're interested in what we call second order knowledge, which is how we know about the world, as opposed to first order knowledge, which is more what you do in the DP subjects, what we know. That's directly about the world, as opposed to, you know, how we know about the world. That sounds complicated. I mean, I always give an example because I'm sort of a history teacher. You know, for example, in history, a first order knowledge question would be, why did the First World War start? Or why did Napoleon invade the rest of Europe? You know, those are first order knowledge questions. A second order knowledge question would be, why do historians have different opinions about the reasons why the First World War started? How might nationalism affect the way in which we interpret Napoleon's motives for invading the rest of Europe, etc., etc. So, you know, that in a nutshell is the difference between these two types of questions. It's something that students struggle with. It's quite difficult. You know, once you've got that, you've kind of got TOK. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to ask second order knowledge questions with our students and get them discussing them. They're much harder to answer. They're broader, and it's really hard to actually give a quick answer to how you encourage them to understand second order knowledge. It's something that comes with practice. It's something that they must apply all the time, and it's something that we use real life situations with in order to help them to get to that point. So that's what we're trying to do. So in language, you know, here's an example of the kind of thing that we would be looking at. I find this quite fascinating. So, you know, obviously in language acquisition, we're looking at words, we're looking at the meaning of words. In TOK, we sort of step back a little bit more, and we think about, you know, what is the role of a dictionary in language? What is the role of authority in language? And this is a great video that I watched with students by someone called Corey Stamper, who's she helps to, I think it's Chambers Dictionary that she helps to write. She's another linguist. And she gives us these two terms. I mean, they're not hers, obviously, but she gives us these two terms: descriptivism and prescriptivism. There are descriptivists who view the role of the dictionary as being there to merely describe how language is used. It's something that evolves over time. We can't stop it evolving. It is, as she says, like a river with lots of branches coming off it. And then there are those who are prescriptivists, who say, you know, the dictionary and other linguistic authorities should be there to tell us how to use language. We must use language in this way. We must follow these rules in grammar. And those are two quite different sort of approaches to language. So in TOK, you know, we would explore these two aspects of language and ask, you know, which one gives us a better understanding of language, which one should we follow, and ask the question, you know, often we have institutions that are set up to be prescriptivist, to, as they would put it, protect language. You know, why might they exist? Why might they be funded by governments? You know, this kind of thing that would lead on to some great discussions. And also we look at the word of the year, which I find quite interesting, which most dictionaries participate in: Oxford dictionaries, Collins dictionaries. They all produce their word of the year, and that's a great thing to look at. I think Collins' word of the year for 2019 was climate action. I mean, it can be a phrase as well as a word. So you can use that to explore the relationship between words and what's going on in society. You know, which one comes first? It's almost like sort of the chicken and the egg. Do we need words in order to have a concept, or do the concepts come first and then we come up with the words? I mean, it's a really interesting idea there. So those are the kind of discussions that we would have going with our students, looking at second order knowledge and second order knowledge questions. No, I don't want to myself be too prescriptivist. I think you should definitely just get some discussions going. But if you can have in the back of your mind that we're trying to lead them towards an understanding of second order knowledge and try and turn their ideas into these questions that can be explored, that would be great, because that would be, that would align well with what goes on in TOK. Okay, so that's really all I have to say in terms of specific ideas and tips for Group 2. I want to talk just a bit more generally, and I'll try and do this quickly so it's not too, excuse me, self-serving. So just to very quickly outline the kind of support that we offer for integrating TOK with the rest of the DP. So we have a specific resource called the DP Integration Tool, which offers a folder, I say there, for every DP subject. And then some people started writing to me saying, have you got business and management? And I thought, oh no, I forgot that one. So I will be adding that at some point, but certainly for DP, for Group 2 in the DP, I have plenty of resources to help you to integrate. I've got a huge list of media sources. I've got quotes. I've got ideas on how to integrate the 12 key concepts of TOK. I've got TED Talks. I've got lots of thinkers. So there's loads of ideas there. And these are things that I add to all the time. So it's constantly being updated, which is the advantage of a website over a textbook. I can constantly, and I am constantly updating the resources. I've mentioned the TOK newsletter. So this is something that I send out to all of the teachers in my school. And I try and make sure that there is as wide a range of real life situations as possible. So there's always a couple of stories connected to language. So that's a great way of integrating what's going on. And then I created another resource called the Knowledge Lexicon, which has, grew massively. It has about 1,000 different words, concepts, that link to different parts of the TOK course and give you a media source to explore that concept. Because language is one of the optional themes, there's a lot of stuff there for language again. So you can have a look at some of the really more important ideas in TOK than just those 12 key concepts, and you can explore them in the context of a media source. So those are some of the things that I offer to help integrate Group 2 with TOK. Yeah, this is not so easy at the moment. But I do love to visit schools. I've visited schools all over the world, and I help I hope, instill some passion, instill some purpose, make sure that the students know why they're doing TOK. I think it's the first question they should ask: what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? And I try and give them the answer to that. So I do that with students. I do that with teachers, both TOK teachers and non-TOK teachers. I love introducing TOK to non-TOK teachers, to the other subject teachers, and I think I can help to give you even more ideas on how to integrate and what a TOK lesson looks like and why we bother with this strange thing in the first place. Joining us, I don't really need to say that. I mean, just go to the website and follow the link to joining us if you're interested in joining us and getting access to all these resources. It's quite easy to do that. I can be very easily contacted as well about what I'm talking about today, about anything else. So, feel free to drop me a line. Okay, what I'm going to do now, what's the time? It's 10 to 12, so we've been going for about 50 minutes. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will have a quick look at some of the questions. I'm hoping to see some questions from people who have no idea about what TOK is and want some advice on language. So we've got a few questions here. It's actually, this is the Q&A session. I'm not very good at this because I don't normally do it. So I've got Q&A. How did your passion develop? What hooked you? I was quite lucky because I started teaching TOK with a fantastic sort of mentor, if you like, Anita Holt, who is now quite high up in the IB. She's sort of one of the masters of TOK, and she helped me because I started teaching in Peru. at Markham College in Lima. And I was really helped by her. I've always worked in schools that have encouraged me to do crazy things and great things in TOK. And I think I've always been a TOK teacher. As a history teacher, certainly, you are a TOK teacher. You have to be a TOK teacher. You have to question sources. You have to get arguments and discussions going. And I think I've always been like that myself. I've always started fights, and I've always, started debates, and I've always got in trouble. And I've just been a subversive for most of my life. So I think TOK is a good fit for someone as difficult as me. All subjects have TOK moments in their syllabus. Do you draw on those statements within those subjects? I don't specifically do that. It might be something that I'm going to look at, but I think there's, I think there's just, I think that's perhaps more for teachers to do rather than me impose upon you, how you should do that. I can offer you from the TOK point of view, and you can then fit it into what you're doing, because I think every school has a different way of doing every subject. But maybe I will have a look at some of those aspects of the syllabus. Someone's just said, yes, would Group 2 teachers be able to explore whether their language's word for life has the same exact meaning as the English word? I mean, I think that's a great thing to do, right? What does that word life mean in different subjects? And actually, there's an amazing and rather sad TOK activity that I do, and I think it's on the website, about, actually it's not life, it's death. How that word death, which should be so objective and final, can be interpreted in completely different ways according to your paradigms, right? So, if you are a scientist, you might have or a doctor, you might have a certain definition for death. If you are someone who is religious, you're going to have a different version of what death is. What marks that moment of moving from life to death? Actually, that's a huge question, and not by any means clear cut. And I looked at it in the real life situation of a very, very sad story of a Somalian boy in America who had injured his neck and went into a coma. It's a horrible story for anyone, but especially if you're a parent. And he was declared dead by the doctors that in the hospital where he went, and his parents and the community refused to accept that, because he was still biologically in some way alive, and they thought his soul was still in his body. So there was a real sort of conflict between when we actually decide that he is officially dead. Someone's just said, would you have support materials in French language? I don't. I'm working on Spanish. I do have someone working on Spanish translations. You might see some of them already appearing. I'm going to try and do Spanish. I need someone who speaks French. I did have someone who came to me who spoke French, and they offered to do it, but then they just sort of disappeared, online. So I'm not sure what happened to them, but I do have someone who I know who's very good, who is working on Spanish translations. I do speak some Spanish myself, so I can keep track of that a little more easily. I'm going to have a look on the chat. So that's the Q&A. Right, I'm a French teacher. I do not teach TOK. Fantastic. That's what I want to see. So hopefully you got something from this. Hopefully this has given you a bit more idea of what TOK is. So ab initio teachers sometimes find difficult to create a TOK-based discussion because of the limited linguistic skills. Any solution? Yeah, I mean, it's not something I can sort of give easily, because that, obviously depends on your class. And I have obviously, teaching TOK, you teach everyone. So I know the students who do these languages, but often it's not because they're sort of more intellectually challenged. They just don't have the language, right? So that hasn't really stopped me in TOK having fantastic discussions with them. Remember what we're looking at. We're looking at the meaning of language, and you don't necessarily have to have these discussions in the language that is not theirs. So I don't know. It depends on what you think you can do with your students, I suppose. Dum dum dum. Someone's saying, can you join? Can you send the link to join you? If you mean the membership, I can certainly do that. Or do you mean the actual meeting? I don't know. All right, I think that's all the questions I've had. If you have any other questions, then please send them my way. I will be sending out, as I mentioned, a debrief email, which will have the link to this video, which will have, and if you're watching the video, this will sound a bit strange. You'll have the link to the presentation, and you'll have my responses to the questions that you've asked. I'm giving excuse me, quite a few more webinars over the next few weeks. If you are a TOK teacher, there's one on the M21 prescribed titles next week as a way of sort of just giving you some ideas on how to kick off the essay writing process. A few thoughts on the prescribed titles. I mean, we can't go into too much detail because we can't write the thing for them, obviously, but we can give them some ideas on what the titles are looking for and the kind of things that they should be including in their essays. I will also be giving 4 more of these webinars on the different groups. So, you know, if you're interested in the different groups, then I'll offer more thoughts like this. And then there's also a webinar at, well, I think in November actually, on TOK for parents, because I would like to get more parents involved in TOK. I think it's the perfect course for parents to get involved in, because it's interesting and it's approachable, and you know, it's fun. It could lead to some fun discussions around the dinner table. I don't know whether I have a utopian view of parenthood, but I think we could get some really nice discussions with our children going over a glass of wine, maybe us drinking the wine, and yeah, whatever. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me for this. I hope to see you all again in the future. If you're TOK teachers, if you're language teachers, I hope you've got some ideas from this. I'm very happy to answer any more questions. Thank you very much. Have a great day and see you at the next webinar. Goodbye.